world is full of those stories of people working their entire life, getting their pension or getting, that golden watch, and then dying, less than a couple years later. I mean, it happens all the time. That's why, this for me was the greatest vocation I could ever have, because it was just reaffirming all the time. Hey, dude, right? Go home, tuck your kids in, be at their school play, go coach everything you can coach. That's the good stuff. And people would literally sitting in the arrangement room with them, they would look at me and go, "You got young kids, right? I mean, get out of here. Go do it." I mean, they're small once, and it was the best advice, best vocation forever for me. It really was.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mental Purpose Podcast. I'm going to do the fastest intro yet. 30 seconds. You ready? My guest today is Chris Meyer. We're going to talk about why death is the greatest teacher of life, right? Death is the greatest teacher about life. That's it. That's all you need to know. Stay with this thing. I had a technical difficulty at the end. There is gold all the way through. Remember, if you need us, join the Mental Purpose community on Facebook. Reach out to us at ianlobos.com. We're happy to help. We got tons of free stuff. You're going to love this episode. Here you go. All right, Chris, welcome, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It's nice.
Yeah. It's we're gonna have some fun today, and I might cry today. It depends on what you say.
That's kind of my MO anyway, so good. Two men
crying. Listen, it's good content. Regardless, it's good content, and people will learn from whatever we dig into. So let's just
Amen.
Let's get started with your background. Like we talked about before I hit record, like the audience wants to know that they're not alone in their failures, in their attempts at success, and then their failures. And so go way back. Just give us, a brief synopsis of your story, and then just include some of the big failures and how you work through those. And then we'll really dig in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a kid that grew up in suburban New York, believe it or not, in a town called Pleasantville, New York, 35 miles north of New York City. Yankee fans, sorry, I see the Dodger hat. Former Brooklyn Dodgers, by the way. And grew up wonderful mom and dad, really sort of, again, the idyllic childhood in a suburban middle-class upbringing. Went to law school, went to Brandeis, spent a year in Purdue, Indiana, had a good cross-section of living on the East Coast. Graduated from law school and said, man, I don't think I could be a lawyer.
Why not?
Made a low budget.
Why not?
What's that? I didn't want to solve people's problems my whole life. And I got a master's in environmental law at Vermont Law School, and the high paying jobs are all on the polluting side. I had worked in the New York State Superfund branch, downtown Manhattan. And I quickly found out that if you want to make the money and not live on $30,000 in New York, or try to, you need to work for Exxon or someone big. So I was a little bit dissuaded off the bat. And lo and behold, I made believe it or not, a low budget film in New York City. Got into the Angelica, the New York Film Festival. Got flown to Venice. I thought I was dialed in for Sundance, and I didn't end up getting into Sundance, right? This was a great crushing defeat. As an independent filmmaker, that's sort of the granddaddy of them all. And I was written up in Variety, as the film to watch from this film festival. And I kind of thought I was a shoo-in for Sundance, right? And then when they made the announcement, I was crestfallen. And so good failure there. I didn't stop on that failure. I knew that I didn't want to be an attorney at that point, despite taking my bar and passing my bar in New York. Side story, they told me I failed. I received a letter that I failed. This is a true story. New York State Bar gave me a letter, said I failed. My mother, ever the champion for her youngest, said, Chris, you studied your ass off. You need to go up and you need to appeal. I said, Mom, are you kidding me? You don't appeal a bar exam. She said, Chris, there's a process in place. Go do it. I took her advice. I went up and I literally, they put you in a side room. You're allowed to open up your exam. and someone had graded the essay portion of my exam as a 7, and my score was a 1.
Oh,
So it was just the way they wrote the 7, right?
yeah,
We've
yeah.
all done it. It looks like a 1. And I appealed it and I won,
Thanks,
believe it or
Mom.
not. And so I credit my mother with that. So that's a great
How do
story.
you know what's interesting?
Again, mom's coming
I
into
think
play.
most of us have stories like where our mom really went to bat for us. I know my mom has. And you're like, is that just being like an overbearing mother who doesn't want to see their son fail? Or is there some validity here? I mean,
I think they have a
yeah,
tuition, right? I mean, it's a woman's tuition or a mom's intuition. I think they truly have that. And I think, our moms know us. Like, I don't know if you have
yeah,
children, but when I parent, my children are so
yeah,
different. That was the biggest eye-opening thing. And I think our parents, especially our moms, I'm coming from a generation where dad went to work and mom
sure.
stayed home with us. They know
Yeah.
you, right? They know every fiber of who you are. And she did. I would say a solid B student, but she saw that I was tanking for it. I was really, really studying for that thing. And I think she just believed in you. And that's what makes
Yeah.
moms great, at least my mom. So after that, I made a low budget film in New York. I didn't get in Sundance, loaded my car up and drove to LA and began an 11-year odyssey in Los Angeles, truly doing what many of us children who have been told where go follow your dreams, where dreams are made and crushed. Um, but I ended up working. Had a friend who worked for Herb Ritz, who was like the foremost fashion photographer back in the day. Cindy Crawford, Elena Pastova, all these famous models, and I would drive to the Chateau Marmont, pick up Helena Christensen, and drive her to the set. That was my
Nice.
job. I was an attorney in New York State, and yet I knew I didn't want to do that. So that was my job, and I was basically a gopher on these sets. But it
Were
was
you
awesome
this is
because
right out
every
of college or right out of law school?
this is in
Yeah,
Los
right out of law
Angeles.
school? So you're young.
Yeah, yeah, this is right
Wow.
out after passing my bar and making this film. And so I was in Los Angeles doing this, and you would get paid pretty good for just a short stint, and then I would go
Yeah.
write. And I was vigilant. I was vigilant about the writing. I was a little bit older, so I wasn't going into Los Angeles
Yeah.
nightclubbing every night and partying on the weekends. I was very, very vigilant about writing, and I thought that was, probably a turning point for me. Again, being a little bit more mature, probably around 32 now, and I took it as a job. And slowly but surely, I got a manager, got an agent, started sending out spec scripts, which is a whole world of frustration and just absolute rejection, abject rejection. And over those 11 years, met a woman on a blind date and had a son. And my son, my firstborn, was really the turning point in
Yeah.
my life because when I brought him home, and I was essentially an unemployed screenwriter with my wife working in Westwood and looking at this child, and that was the turning point for me. It was like, dude, Peter Pan
Yeah.
long enough. It's time to show this little man and make him proud of you. And I really attribute my first son, and again, for that turning point. And lo and behold, I could have gone back to New York into my father's work, which he was a civil engineer consultant, or become a lawyer. And we didn't want to do that. We kind of wanted to be in California, and my wife's family was from up north. Had a friend in the family who had always been saying, funeral homes are a very solid business, Chris, and I'm a mortician, I know. So I went into business with this guy. It never happens. Funeral homes don't end up in bankruptcy. We found one, lo and behold, the stars were aligning, and bought it, turned it around, and that was the genesis of the
Got it.
first film.
So let's go back because I want to really dig into those 20 things you
Yeah.
learned from being a funeral homeowner. And it's weird because on your one sheet it says funeral homeowner, and I'm like, funeral homeowner? What does a homeowner have to do with like anyway? It needs a space in there, and it
Right.
tricked me. So I want to go back for a second because
Yeah.
there are people that are going to listen to this and say, "All right, Chris, I get it. Your whole world shifted when you had a kid. Can your world shift without a kid? Like, what is that? What is that determining?"
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if your world can shift without. I would
Sure.
imagine that it can, but certainly when I didn't have children as a young man, my world was shifting. I think it was because I attribute it to my father. And again, my father was a hardworking man, not a 9 to 5er. He was like a nine to
Yeah.
eighter. Worked as a civil engineer consultant, which is really pretty dry work. But the uniqueness of my father is that when he came home from work, there was so much joy in describing his workday to us at sitting around the table, and we always sat at a dinner table. And I could see the joy in his face. And then as a sophomore in high school, he took off on his own and built a civil engineer business out of our house. So we would have dinner at night, and these people were coming and moonlighting, and mom was making meals for everyone, and they were all working in the back by the fireplace. It was insane. So that did two things. It showed me my dad had a big set of cojones, right? And he was like going out on his own. He was not a young man at that point. And secondly, it ignited that entrepreneurial spirit, I believe. I saw everything at ground level, from their discussion of coming home and saying, hey, we think dad's going to leave his job. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We got a beautiful company car. We have a beautiful home. And, they were like, calm down, Junior.
How old were you then?
I was 15
Okay.
at the time. So it was very, very,
Kind of
for me, it was really enlightening because I was at a pivotal
Yeah.
time in my life, right? Just kind of figuring out probably my freshman, sophomore year in high school, girls starting to come on board, me starting to feel a little bit my own in sports. And so it was a really pivotal time. But I do remember coming home every night and seeing these people who had worked 9 to 5s and then saw something in my father besides a paycheck,
Sure.
I'm sure, and said, wow, I'm going to go to that guy's house and help him build.
You
It
know
was
what's
insane.
interesting?
It was
Like,
insane.
my dad did that when I was 4 years old, and I remember that day. And that's a long time ago, right? And it's 36 years ago. I still remember how I felt, and I remember the difference between my dad's energy and my mom's energy. So, to give my mom credit, my mom was laying in our brand new house that they technically couldn't afford in this new and up and coming area of Baltimore County, and my dad just said, I quit my job today. And now let me give you a context. My mom is laying in a full body cast in the living room in a hospital bed because of a botched spinal fusion. So she can't move. So the energy, the fear, I felt that very early on. And my dad's confidence was
yeah.
really unwavering. And like, obviously I picked up on that energy, and I adopted some of that fear of like financial fear, things like that. And then I just saw my dad said, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And I believe I can make this work. And it was just so clear.
How how
Super
cool is
clear.
that, right? I mean, and that's a great thing to talk about. I think you say you want to talk
Yeah.
about failures. Your audience wants to hear that. That financial fear, that you have that at 20, you have it at 30, you have it at 40. I've had it at 50. It it never goes away. You know what goes? There's an extra zero at the end of your equation every time.
Right.
I'm serious. That's what it happens. It never goes
No.
away. And for me, that's the hunger, right? That's why I'm on that habit trail.
Yeah.
And that's why my dad always said, look, you're going to be working hard your whole life. You might as well
Well,
love what you do.
that's true.
And that's key for me.
That's a phenomenal line that I'm gonna cut. Like, Jim Carrey has a line in his speech to Maharishi University that says, like, why live a life doing something that you hate when you could take a chance at doing something that you love? And it made me emotional because I watched like, at that moment, you don't think that this is a massive turning point in your family's generational history. Yet what he was doing was saying to me, if you don't test yourself and push yourself and take chances on yourself, you'll never know. And the lesson I learned that day was not about taking chances. It was about believing in yourself. That's what I learned. No, I didn't realize that at 4 years old.
Yeah.
I realized that later on.
Right.
But that was great.
Right. And I think the thing that our generation should know is, right, that the failures are the good stuff. The failures are your bricks, right? Because you're ultimately building this house. And if you're not failing, that means you're not trying. And everyone fails. Jim Carrey's story is so freaking unique. I mean, he goes back to like cleaning with his parents because they had no money in it, right? They were in a cleaning service and he wrote himself that check. That's the famous story also. So he knows, he's been there. But those failures are your bricks that are building your house. And each one of those failures, the smart thing is you got to learn from each one, right? You can't be, otherwise it's the insanity, doing the same thing over and again, expecting a different result, right? We've all heard that line too. But the failures, and I tell my sons, please fail, because then I know you're working towards something. You'll learn.
Why are people so afraid of failure? It is such a great thing. Yet when you internalize it, that's when it becomes dangerous. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. Like, failure is not
right. And that's why mental illness is a problem.
And then there's like the next ring out of the giant, like web that you get into. The next ring out is, well, I'm failing because I'm comparing myself to this person. Yet if you don't compare to that person, your failure is a temporary hit that you just keep moving from, right?
Yeah, I mean, you talked right there. That was suburban life, right? We always compare ourselves with the Joneses. We've heard that. And hey, are we allowed to swear on this? The Joneses don't fucking exist.
Yeah.
By the way, okay, don't compare yourself to the Joneses because they don't exist. And if they do, they're so twisted in their own world. You want no part of that. That's the key. I'm in suburban, I won't say where I am, but that we're all ready for college, right? And in our world, you go to this college advisor and they help you write essays. And I said to my wife, I ain't paying 10, 15 grand for someone to do that. You and me can do this with our son. And she's like, really? We want to take this on? I was like, yeah, we do. And you know what? He got into college, believe it or not. Yeah. Trust me, there's plenty of colleges that want your copy.
Yeah, that's right. You know, what's interesting is like, that's another topic we could dive into, and I don't want to because it goes deep. Like the college, bubble and the mania, and then how, the expense of it. And I got out of college. I remember my first 2 years in college, I would call my dad every other day. I'm like, Dad, this isn't for me. I want to come home. I just want to work with you. I don't want to be here. I don't like this. And my dad would go, look, man, I'm paying for it. So be grateful, one, and which I was. And two, society says you have to have this piece of paper. Unfortunately, I didn't make up the rules, son. But society says you got to have this piece of paper, which puts you on another level. That's it. That's literally it. Just play the rules of the game. Play the game. And then it was like, but and my dad, like, he took the pressure off me and he said, look, man, I'm not expecting straight A's. Do I believe that you could get them? Yes. Do I believe that you want to get them? No. And I don't want you to go get them. I want you to have decent grades and I want you to have a great experience. I'm not paying for your grades because your grades don't mean shit. You're an entrepreneur. They don't mean anything. No one gives a shit about your grades. In fact, I'm 39 and a half years old and I have never written a resume. I don't have a resume. I don't care. And so he said, like, I am not paying for grades. I am paying for you to learn about life. And in there are some classes. Yet when you go back to the dorm room, that's also a class that the college doesn't endorse. You're learning shit at every moment. And he started teaching me about leadership and like first leading myself, which I think as college kids, we're trying to figure out who the hell we are and what we're doing in this world. And like, do I need to be a management studies accounting degree major thing, or can I just go for the communications thing just to get this piece of paper? And you're figuring all that stuff out. Yet so many kids are pushed into this, like, you got to get good grades so you can get that good job and just fall into that treadmill, right? Which leads into like the treadmill of life. And then you see the last effect, which is the treadmill leads right to the grave. Unfortunately. And a lot of people never even look around. They just stay eyes forward.
They never even look around. Yeah. And I, again, that was part of the impetus to share people's stories of that, because the world is full of those stories of people working their entire life getting their pension or getting, that golden watch, and then
Yeah.
dying, less than a couple years later. I mean, it happens
Sure.
all the time. That's why, this for me was the greatest vocation I could ever have, because it was just reaffirming
Fucking
all the
reality check.
time. Hey, dude,
Yeah.
right? Go home, tuck your kids in, be at their school play, go coach everything you can coach. That's the good stuff. And people would literally sitting in the arrangement room with them, they would look at me and go, "You got young kids, right? I mean, get
Yeah.
out of here. Go do it." I mean, they're small once, and it was the best advice, best vocation forever for
You
me.
know what I
It
think
really was.
about is I used to sell real estate in Baltimore, and our average price points were like, let's say between 250 and 400,000, which you're in an undisclosed location right now in the witness protection program. We'll pretend that. I'm in LA, and I'm not a Dodger fan. I just like this
Yeah.
logo. I think it's really cool. And um
Okay.
and so when I was selling real estate in Baltimore, I remember like I would get really emotional with older people who, like, I remember this guy was in his 90s and he was just getting taken care of by nurses, and his daughters called me to come sell the house and they're moving him in with them. And I'm like sitting there with him one day, and he was pretty lucid, like he was pretty aware. And he said, and I said, so what did you do as a profession? And he said, I worked in this factory. And I said, interesting. And he said, I've been retired for like, I don't know, 35 years or something crazy. And I said, well, what'd you do in your retirement? And he goes, you're looking at it. And I felt his pain. Like every day was about something external. Like, oh, I think my daughters are going to come over with the grandkids today, and that makes my day. Or there's a program on TV I'm going to watch, and I really felt empathy for the first time at a much deeper level than I ever had. And the guy died like 2 weeks after settlement, and that was early on. And I remember there's another guy that really shifted how I thought about life. And I remember we got to the day of settlement, and I went up to his house, and nothing was packed, like a whole house, nothing's packed. And this guy is in tears on the living room floor looking at his wedding
Oh.
album. And shit, I'm gonna try not to choke myself up. um, and I walked in, I was like, and I won't say his name. I said, everything okay? We're going to settlement in like 2 hours. There's nothing packed. And he's like, I'm sorry, man. I know I got to move. This is my wife and I built this house
Yeah.
together, and she left too early, and like she had died. And like I sat there for 2 hours, and when the when the buyers came, they were like, what the fuck? And I said, guys,
Yeah.
this is on me. Like, don't blame him, don't sue
Yeah.
him. If you're gonna do something, do
Right.
it to me. Like, I can't
Right.
push this guy today. I'm sorry, like I can't. And they were like, well, what
Yeah.
are we supposed to do? And no, and this guy came out and he said, look, I'll pay for your hotel, I'll pay for your moving expenses, I'll do whatever it takes. I'm so sorry. And I just sat there with him for
Yeah.
another couple hours, and we just like he explained things to me about life that I'd never heard in that perspective. And it scared me
Yeah.
that my life was being wasted. It was 2015. I'd been in real estate for 3 years. And I was starting to think like, this isn't it. I am not happy.
Mm.
The money has me trapped. I was making insane money, and I'm the provider and I'm the hero and everything's great because I'm getting all these awards. Yet, like, look what this guy's going through because his wife didn't even have a chance to live her
Right.
life as long as she thought she would. So, like, what am I doing with my
Yeah.
fucking life here? And that's why I kept saying, is this it?
Yeah.
Is this really it? Is this all there is? Selling some houses in this city and living in that house and like wearing a tie that I don't like. And that really opened my eyes. Yet it was about like, whenever the end is, will I actually say, I'm good? Like, check that box. Like, I'm good. And that scared the shit out of me. And I changed my trajectory into obviously what I do today. And
Oh man, I mean that. Thank God you had that jettison, that
sure.
turning point, because I think I was very lucky also to have that similar thing. My grandfather was my best friend in life, and he lost his wife, my grandmother, at 60 years old. And this is a guy, immigrant, German immigrant, delivered eggs and cheese up and down the streets of New York City, Harlem to the
Yeah.
Bowery, for his entire life, 6 days a week, about 12-hour days. got sent over to America as payola for money that went to the sawmill in Germany, and ended up just starting a life here and had my mom. But he lost her early, so he was what, 62, and had worked his ass off in the unair conditioned truck in New York City, and then his wife dies, and he didn't know how to boil an egg.
Yo, interesting.
And so what do you do?
Interesting.
I mean, and so I had a similar experience, but I was lucky because he's my grandfather, and we were playing sports all our life, me and my brothers, and he would come to every game, and I mean, he would come to open of a paper bag. He was at everything, and we had that relationship, that one-on-one, and I was so fortunate, and it taught me so much. It taught me, you said it best. If we could teach our children a couple of things, kindness and empathy, good God, what a world we live in. I mean, those two things alone will carry us, because if you can put yourself, especially whether you're in the funeral business or selling homes, and you could put yourself in that person's, shoes for one day, right? Just one day, it impacted. Look at what it did for your life.
I'm still very
It
close with
impacted
them.
you in so many ways.
I'm still very close with them. They
Right.
send my kids birthday cards, like that day. And there's somebody listening that really needs to hear this. Like, when you are really there for somebody in their world, it's really like over here with them, right? When you're there, like nothing else fucking matters at that moment. They feel that, and they know that it's real and it's authentic. And you can actually change somebody's life. You can change their trajectory of how they think about humanity.
And change your own.
And your own. Yeah, totally.
And change your own.
What do you think about
change your own?
Something I process is like, one of the biggest reasons why I started podcasting, I started my coaching business, and I started to move myself out of real estate, or at least my identity out of real estate, was because one of my coaches once said to me, I said, dude, why do I hate this so much? Like, shouldn't I just be grateful and happy and appreciative that I've achieved this and that I have this level of success? And he was like, no, it's because you're replaceable. Like, if you died tomorrow, and he gave me an exercise, and audience, I want you to listen to this. He said, I want you to go to your broker right now. And don't say anything about yourself. Just say, if an agent dies tomorrow and they have like 3 open transactions that are going to settlement, what happens? And my broker was like, was there an agent that died? And I was like, no, I'm just hypothetical. I'm just asking. And he goes, well, obviously we'd be sad, and we would reach out to the clients, and, we would reach out to the clients and say, hey, Johnny died. So sorry. Very nice guy. Very nice guy.
And let's
close that shit up. Mary right here is going to take your transaction right to the finish line. Like, you're in all you thought you were significant. You weren't. You were replaceable. And so when he said that, and I got confirmation from my broker, and by the way, there's nothing wrong that my broker said. That's just how it is. It's business, right?
No,
but what about the human's life in there? What about the person that, like, what about their life? And I think about this shit, and I think about this with a lot of our clients who are lost or who just haven't found their path. And I thought about this in my own life. Like, if I died tomorrow, like, does anybody give a fuck? Did I make any impact here? Did I do anything for this planet to move it?
Right.
And the answer back then, honestly, was no. I had made a shit ton of money. I donated a lot of money. I, supported my economy. Yet Ian didn't make impact in the way that Ian felt he should. And that really started to change me. And I speak to that point with a lot of people. Like, are you okay leaving this planet knowing that you are replaceable and that you will be replaced? Like, could someone jump on this mic and interview you? Sure. Could somebody fill in for me as a coach in my coaching business? Yes. However, that empathy and that understanding of another human being and the skill level and the talent, that's not matched. It's not replaceable. It's just not like I do it.
It totally is not. And I think, especially as a young man, we kind of think in those macro views. And I think as I've gotten older and started to had some of the experiences that you had, my world has gotten infinitely smaller, because my famous line is, who's going to be there on your deathbed, right? Who's going to be around you, right? Those are the people that are going to matter. They matter right now. have the time with those people now, because they're going to be the guys that are going to say, hey man, Ian was a rock star. I loved him. We had these great days together. We didn't do much and we did so much at the same time. And I think we tend, especially as young people, to think, oh man, we need possessions or we need experiences. And really, my best times are with my son watching a ball game on the couch, holding each other's hand, or talking about something silly that happened at school. Those for me are the
Sure.
gold. That's where I like to live, and that's what changed my entire life in being in the funeral
Let me dig
industry.
into that for a second. So there's a difference between the father provider there as the dad in the household mentality or like action, and then there's the real quality time. So like, look, you've been to LA, LA, like there's just a lot of ego here and there's a lot of falseness and fakeness and inauthenticity here. And I think that in my opinion, from my own life and from others that I've coached and watched, like big high level CEOs, like they think that the providing of the financial resource is basically is it like, oh, look at this house, like
Um,
look at the cars they drive, look at the school they go to, like that's me. Yet it's
yeah,
the time that you're talking about, quality, authentic time,
yeah,
that actually creates the legacy. Like it actually creates the
correct,
legacy.
correct. And you can't pay for
No,
more time,
no.
right? That's the greatest line, from the funeral industry. The most valuable thing in the world is time. You can't, if you want to buy it, you can't get it, right? It's just, and that's why the value of it is infinite, and you have to be very smart, especially as you get older, how you use that time and what you use that
Yeah.
time on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting piece because you get to see, like, I'm pretty sure that you are not going to tell me a story of how you bring people back from the dead. Like I'm pretty sure you're not going to do that. Right.
Definitely not. I'm a
Right,
pragmatist.
right.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm also not going to tell you that a casketer is the way to go. I'm the cheapest guy, and we should all be cheap and get cremated and not take up space and all that stuff. But
You think
no, no, I'm a
you think
pragmatist.
that's egotistical to take up more space on the planet? Like you already didn't take up enough space and kind of spend resources?
Look, so I'm a little different because I was actually I'm trained as an environmental lawyer, so I do have a little bit of
Sure.
conscious about the environment and Mother Earth. And I do believe that it is finite, and we have to be a little bit more
Sure.
resourceful in many, many ways. And I don't know how we all do that, but cremation for me is one of those things that we can
I
do.
mean, just think about it though, like the body in this sort of fanfare and the casket and the open and the wake all day long and then the gravesite and then the lowering in and the whole like the fanfare, like, and I'm not
The
yeah,
pageantry of it
Patrick, like I'm
all,
not
right?
negating it and I'm not saying it's not great. I've never really dealt with a major death in my, I mean maybe I have some friends from in college. It was really rough. However, like, do you is it a necessity to keep that body there in that box in the ground, or is what you're saying? I've never thought about it like that. I'm just like spitballing with you.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously I'm in the funeral industry, and you think I would be pushing caskets, because that's a $10,000-$12,000 boon for the
Sure,
funeral home versus a $2,000 one. So it's definitely more profitable for me to push burial. But I just don't. I think each family is unique,
sure,
obviously, and needs sometimes people need that body
yeah,
present, especially if they're people coming in from out of town. They want to preserve the technical term is, I want to preserve the proper memory
yeah,
picture for them, and I want to see them in that sleeping state. But again, as a pragmatist, for me, I've had those memories with the people. My parents are both 82, knock on wood, are still alive. I'm grateful. My in-laws. And it wouldn't be as important to me because I know in my lifetime, the experience and the memories that I have with them, they are here already, and I got them. So I'm good. Um, but it is very important for some people and some
sure.
religions.
I totally get that.
It's really, really a part of a rite of passage that don't
Sure,
mess with that,
sure.
and we need that.
Yeah, I just think about it in terms of like, are you trying to hold on to memories that you didn't get or didn't
Yeah,
experience? That final preservation of the final memory. Like,
Right.
I'm not really sure if I want that to be my final sight of this person. I mean, and granted,
Right.
I don't have experience with that. I'm just thinking out loud. It's almost like,
Right.
they're gone, and now it's time to just, it's the goodbyes are there and present, and now let's like look through
Yeah.
pictures and great memories, not like a body, that's kind of freaky. And I remember my buddy
Yeah.
Rob died when we were 25 of like a stomach
Whoa.
aneurysm, like just his insides exploded. There was some stuff going on there, but like I remember like just so upset seeing him, because before we saw him in the casket, like I was the fraternity historian, so I had all the pictures on my, in my computer, and I went back up to my college town, and we all met up there, and we were just looking through pictures, and then the next day, I saw his body, and it really messed me
Yeah.
up and messed a lot of guys up, because it was like, shit, man, like 3 months ago, we were just playing volleyball together. Now he's dead, and
Right.
like the skin
Right.
tone wasn't right, and like, it's just,
No, no, it
it was
never is.
weird. It
Yeah.
was really jarring, and I remember sitting with his
Yeah.
parents, and I was like, this is really this was an experience, like crazy experience. And
Yeah.
maybe that also added to like, you got to live life, because the kid's just gone.
Yeah.
And like in our
Yeah.
mastermind group, I literally tell people, like, my cousin died a couple years ago. He would have been 39 like a couple weeks ago, and he died when he was like 35 or 36. And it's like, you're running on this treadmill together next to each other at the gym, right? Not literally, and just figuratively in life. And like, you see him on social, and he's posting, going on these trips, and you're like, oh, cool, man. Hey, man, what's going on? Hey, you want to meet up for lunch? And then you turn around to grab a sip of water. And by the time you spin your head back, the treadmill's
Right.
just rolling, and he's gone. And
Right.
that's
Right.
challenging. Like, how do you, God, I have so many fucking questions for you. How do you,
Yeah, but I mean, what is the legacy? That you said it
yeah,
best. For me, I'm trying to leave books that are about my sons. They all are very intimate and have, talk about my experience of growing with them and how much I enjoyed that. And to me, that's the legacy I want to leave. Look, we have challenging times with our children. I have a 15-year-old now, and it's very. I mean, sometimes dad is like the
yeah,
antichrist, and I just walked in from work. But I believe that they will come back to these stories, whether it's through my own mouth or through the books, and they will truly see that how much
of
dad
course.
loved them, and that's
Yeah,
important to
it's a
me.
phase. It's a
Yeah,
phase. So how do you obviously you kind of led up to like buying a funeral home, like how, I don't care what this deal would be. I don't care what you sell me. I'm not buying a funeral home. I don't want to see dead people. I don't How did you do that, like, mentally?
yeah. So I had the mortician. So I, like you, was thinking the exact same thing. I was thinking I'm gonna just sit in the back. I'm gonna run this place. I know how to read a profit and loss sheet, and I know I'm pretty good at haggling for the best prices on overhead. Keep my
Yeah.
overhead low and let that's the way I'm thinking. But then it's a family run place. It's tiny. And invariably they get the call, hey Chris, can you help us on a removal? And I'm like, what do you mean removal? And they're like, we got a body. I need you to come pick it up. And I'm like, okay, and slowly I'm getting deeper and deeper. And then, hey, we have someone sick today. Can you meet with a family? And I'm like, oh man, really? And like, yeah, it's easy. Don't worry. You're a lawyer. They kept saying all that. You're a lawyer. You're fine. You're a smart guy. And so then you get deeper and deeper. And, I talk about in the book, one of the seminal moments for me was going into the embalming room for the first time. And just by happenstance, there were two bodies, which are called in the industry, you call it posted. So they had been to the coroner's office. They had the Y like you see on any CSI, only the embalmer had opened the Ys and the flanks were all open. And I literally came in. First of all, the smells, right? You could smell it coming down the hall, and then to see these two bodies like this, and someone said, my guy who was with me, the mortician, said, you gonna be okay with this? I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. And I went in, and it was a black person and a white person next to each other. And I don't know why I didn't focus on the flaps of skin and the rib cage, like sitting up like this, and all the innards. For me, I gravitated to the feet. And I looked at them and saw that they were Caucasian and African American, and I'm like, the craziest. I don't know why. Probably because I just had made a race relation movie
Yeah.
back in the day, and I'm like, everyone needs
Dead
to see
equal.
this, because that inside is the exact same as that
Yeah.
inside, and all it is this, you know. And so for me, I think, like I said, I made a race relations drama where the white actors played the black people and the black actors played the white people, and so that for me, more than the grotesqueness that a layperson would assume from this situation, was more profound than anything. And I just, you know, again, I looked at the higher being and I said, man, I wish everyone could
Yeah.
see this, because that was so fascinating.
That's crazy. Like, how do you not? And I've never heard it put like that. Death is the
Yeah.
equalizer. Everybody's equal in death, no matter
Equalizer.
how much cash, how
Equal.
fat, skinny, nothing.
Ain't matter.
You are
Don't
laying on a
matter.
table next to whoever, and you don't have a choice. And it's crazy to think about that, but that is right. Like in
Yeah.
that moment,
Yeah.
there's no difference. It's just a human it's a human laying there, and like, how do you not have nightmares about that? I mean, like, I'm
I don't really know, because that's funny you say that. I mean, many people would have said that to me, and I don't know. And I was never like this science
yeah,
kid. I never had any kind of curiosity. I told you about my grandfather's experience, and he had onset of Alzheimer's. And I do remember, you know, one Christmas Eve when he was up at my parents' house and he couldn't go to the bathroom properly, and I had to help him. And I think I I don't know. I think there was something
sure,
natural that I gravitated once taking care in a couple of situations with my grandfather, that I figured if I went
yeah,
through that, this is going to be cake. I don't even know these people, and I can do this because, I lived it with my
sure,
grandfather. And maybe there's something there. I don't know. I had no special training, no special proclivity, nothing. But also, again, you talk about it, right? The motivator. I thought constantly in the back of my mind, I have one baby at home, I have another one on the way, and I don't have plan B,
fair,
right?
fair,
There was no,
yep,
right? I was an attorney, great. I felt confident, good. But there was no real plan B for me. My wife wanted to be a stay at home mom and raise our children. And that was a great motivating factor. That was like, throttle down. I don't
sure.
care. Just, I got to make money for the family. And, a lot what you talked about, probably very similar in
You know
your
what's
life.
interesting? I'm glad you say that, because now that brings new context into forcing yourself into shit that you're really uncomfortable with. I think it also brings context to I coach a lot of real estate agents and business owners and sales teams. And, when people have that like phone phobia, like cold call phobia, and don't force themselves through that, like, well, you could be Chris. You could have to force yourself through looking at dead bodies all day. And like, it's not
Right.
just a dead body.
Right.
Like, you saw
No.
gruesome, like, and
Yeah.
there's kind
Gruesome
of like
stuff.
this beautifulness in death as well. But like, when the body's open like that, it is jarring. And I've
Yeah.
never seen that. I've seen it on CSI,
Yeah.
and it's fucking jarring there. Like,
Right.
you don't,
Yeah. And it looks exactly the same, by the way. They do a
yeah,
great job.
yeah.
That's it. It's that frightening. Yeah.
So,
But the smells are
that's
what you
that's
don't
the
get in
other thing, is
CSI.
you're not getting all the other sensory perceptions, like the coldness of the
Yeah, for
room,
sure.
the sounds of
Right.
like the quietness and the tools and the like.
Right.
Did you ever think? Do you ever do you ever get nervous or scared that like somebody's gonna come back to? Not the one that's wide open, but like a fresh one.
No, it's funny. We hear a lot of those stories on the
Yeah.
news, right? You hear someone like went to the funeral home and the bag was slapping around. No, I have not had any of those stories. Usually, someone has pronounced them, and those people are
Yeah, yeah.
professionals. So I chalk it up to that. But I have not had those experiences. It's funny. I've been on a couple other podcasts, one with a medium and one with another woman, and they asked me similar questions. They were almost disappointed, like that I hadn't had those stories. And I'm like, I'm not going to make one up
No,
for you. I'm just going to tell you my experience. And I felt like I let them down. Like I was going to come in and say, I see dead people, right?
no.
I
Technically, you
don't.
do.
No, that's
Technically,
not
you
me.
do see dead people all day long,
Yeah,
right? Like,
I do. You're right,
you
but
don't
you
see
know what I'm
dead
saying.
people who come back alive. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, definitely not.
I think one of the I want you to dive in with the time we have left. I want you to dive into the 20 lessons, right? Like even just a couple of your favorites. One of the questions I have is when you're sitting with a family, does like do they ever get into their disappointment or their man,
Oh,
like
for
this guy
sure.
could have been so much more, or like he could have done more for the world, or he could have stepped up more. Like, do you get into that stuff?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because they're first of all, it's a huge responsibility because generally these people, especially if there was a love relationship, a strong love relationship, are very, very vulnerable. They probably haven't slept in days. They probably haven't eaten properly and drank properly. So they're coming in very vulnerable. So you have to be very careful. And, my job is really not to
Right.
probe, really, is just to sit back and listen. That's really the gift. And I think in many other industries, we could all learn that. That would be great. But the ability to listen. But yes, they come in and they, generally speaking, and again, this is a macro view, drugs, alcohol, untapped potential are usually have been compressed down by one of those things. And I think, the stories of, this kid was just the nicest, most charming athlete and great student. And, there was a catalyst, there was something in their life that turned them. And, you said it very eloquently in the beginning, was about teaching people about failures, right? And it's how do we snap
Mhm.
back? And we have to understand, and again, it's hard when you're young because you're so vulnerable already. Your emotions are at the tips of your fingers. But understanding that failure is part of life for everyone. There is Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, whomever has gone through it, and failure. It's what you do with that, right? Can you throttle down after the failure and say, "Hey, fuck it, yeah, okay, where's plan B? How do I learn from this and zag? And what is the turn that I have to take?" I'm learning that even to this day. I created a website that we thought was geared to the older people, and then boom, we did a 180 and said it's for everyone. So it's constantly in life. You have to understand that. It's just that at a young age, it sometimes feels like this
Sure.
massive
Sure.
thing, right? And it's
Sure.
not. It's freaking not. You know, you got plenty of time to
Well, it's
recover.
there's also like there's a time on task as well. So your first couple big failures, relationship failure or school failure or something like they weigh heavy because especially if you're not in sports and you
Right.
don't understand failure, like time on task in terms of you've had 100 failures, so this one it doesn't really hurt that much. Yet if you've only had two big failures, this one hurts big time, and you got to process through it. But
Right.
that's a parent's job, right?
Right. But Malcolm Gladwell said it the best, right? What do we have to put in like
Yeah,
10,000
outliers.
hours into whatever it
Sure,
is, right? That was, I mean, again, it was a really popular book, and it's right. I mean, it makes
yeah,
sense, and you have to put the time in, and you've got to be on the bottom rung to
yeah,
learn. That's
yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Stick
Yeah,
to
and
it.
I had this
Yeah.
conversation with someone last night. They're like, this guy's super successful, and I said, "Dude, you want to know what the hardest part of what you're asking me to help you with is?" And he said, "Sure." And I go, "It's going from a PhD classroom to the freshman classroom and being okay with it. Like literally, that's it. You have to go from being a mastery level guy and expert at this to I don't fucking get me. I don't understand me. Why am I not happy? I have all the stuff that I want. Why am I not happy?" That's our big thing in the mental purpose organization and the other brands that we have is how do we help someone understand that the life they're living that they thought would make them happy, like how do we help them transition into living the life that actually will make them happy? That's a big deal.
What is there a big takeaway from that? Do you find that there's a common thread in what generally makes people happier?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think like if you look at the genesis of it, it's school and society and mom and dad kind of, and I'm talking like specifically for men, like high level men, like they have gone down this road of success. They have the money, the cars, the house, the vacations, the family, yet they never found that time or made that time for themselves to show themselves that they're valuable, that they're worth it, that they mean something, that they love themselves. Like they never found that self actualization. It came from the external.
Mm,
And then what happens is some guys hit it at 30. I mean, I hit it at 35, some guys hit it at 65. Like, oh my God, I've been running on this treadmill. Like, I truly can be happy. I just don't know how. Like, my friend's really happy inside and out. And what we're really talking about is the difference between the financial freedom that people seek and the internal freedom that people really want. You're not going to get it from money. You're going to get it from actually stepping back and saying, like, I'm going to give a fuck about me today. I'm going to be selfish as shit today. Not in detriment to your family or your health or anything, but like, I'm going to take care of me today. I'm going to go do this because I want to, because it's for me and it means something to me. And I'm going to teach myself that I matter to me. That's huge. And
mm.
so when guys can
That
shift
is
that,
huge.
happiness, joy, fulfillment is a result of that pivot of mindset and belief patterns that they're actually worth spending time on, or that they're valuable enough
Yeah.
without their money or their success or their job title, that they're actually worth it as a human. You will be mind blown how
Hmm.
many guys, I mean, 95% of the people, men and women that come to us are in that position where they're having, a measurement of success, yet they're measuring their success by the money only. And it's dangerous. It's really freaking dangerous. Super
Very
dangerous. So that's
dangerous.
why it's kind of
Yeah.
like you we basically say, like, we'll help you quit the life you thought would make you happy to start living the life that actually does, which is self-empowerment. There's
Mm,
self-empowerment and they're all over the place. It's big. Yeah, it's really big.
mm.
Yep.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
So when you deal with family, do people come back like maybe a year later or something? Or like, do you ever catch up with somebody or meet somebody, like time later and then,
Yeah, I tell a story in the book, which was it was heartbreaking about a woman who lost her daughter to a car accident, and it's kind of a funny, freaky story. It was kind of weekend at Bernie's. She asked if they could take her from the funeral home and drive around with a couple of friends to some of her haunts, and that actually happened. It's legal.
wait, the
I
body?
had to check with the body.
How do you
Yeah,
how do you
drove
do that?
around to all the haunts where they used to drink beers, brought her back, said, "Can I spend some couple hours with her?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go do some work in the back." We prepared her and placed her, and the mom sat in the room with her. And then I said, "I'm going home." Uh, and I looked up. She looked up at me. She goes, "Oh, it's time to go." And I said, "You're not ready, are you?" And she said, "No." And I gave her the key to the funeral home, and I said, "I'll be back in the morning. Stay as long as you want. Just throw it in the mailbox." I came back in the morning. She's
Damn.
still there. And she got up and she gave me a hug, like one of those hugs
You
where
feel it.
you know what it's
Yeah.
about, right? And she said, thank you so much," and she left. And I tell the story that a year later, I'm in the grocery store buying a sandwich for lunch, and I saw her, and like an idiot or a nice person, depending on what you say, I see her and I went up to her. She looks up and she sees me but doesn't know who I am. And I walk up and I say, "Hey, I'm Chris from the funeral home." And her face just went, whoa. Like she was this smiling woman seeing a handsome guy coming toward her, and then boom, went white. And I was like, fuck, I brought her
Yeah.
back. I said, I was so pissed at myself because I was saying she was probably at that year mark where she was just
Yeah.
healing, because that's a typical grief mode. And I brought her fucking back, and it wrecked me. It absolutely
Yeah.
wrecked me. And I gave her a hug, and she said, thank you so much for all you did," and walked away. But I knew I was more pissed at myself than feeling like my
Yeah.
oats, And I was just like, I knew that I had brought her that memory back when she was just about there, and that was devastating. So I don't say hi too much anymore, Ian, to people in the stores. Just put my head down and walk, unless I'm confronted.
How do you not internalize that pain, man? Like, no, I'm
Yeah,
saying not just with that one. Like,
yeah,
you have the compound effect.
yeah,
It's pain every
right,
day. Like, people ask me this, and they'll say, like, you get really fucking deep with people and talk about mom and dad traumas and school and like the bullshit that happened when you're a kid, and like, how do you not internalize that? Well, I think it's a cakewalk for me not to internalize that. However, I have my systems to be able to be present and there with them, yet not soak it in. I mean, dude, you're dealing with the
right,
most emotional time of people's life. How are you
right.
not like on Zoloft at like an nth degree
Right,
prescription?
right. And
I
I'm
know.
not, but I'll be honest with you. So that was the sort of the first 7 years of my life here and doing those stories. And at when I started writing the book, I knew that I probably couldn't do this for my life, and that's why you made the very learned note that you saw funeral home owner. I'm more now the owner, and people run my
Yeah.
places, because I didn't think I could do that. I was that guy who did that. I got too emotional. I cared about people too
Sure.
much, and that's what they say about funeral directors. You'll either start drinking at 10:30 in the
Right.
morning, or you'll leave at 5 and you'll go be with your family. And I chose the latter because I knew it would wreck me. I knew it would wreck me as a
What
human.
about I feel like there's also the robotic side where you like death doesn't scare you.
You don't
Well,
want
that's
to
what
be
I'm
that
saying. Like
though.
there's that
You
other
don't want to
extreme
be
of
that.
like
Yeah,
I sold a
yeah.
house for a guy. Um, he had lost he lost his job in like the I think in like the late 70s. And one of his friends was like, "Well, we're looking for a, a mortician, I guess, and an embalmer." And the guy was like, "I got a family. I need to make some money, so I'll go do it." And like he had this 45-year career. Just go from 2018 45 years back, and he had just retired. And man, the conversations with and he was in the robotic phase, like their
Yeah,
transactions now.
yeah,
And I was picking his
yeah,
brain about stuff. I mean, the guy chain smoked cigarettes like they were going out of style. And I remember like asking him questions because I was curious. And I said, what's the worst experience? And I also want to ask you that, like, what is the most, I don't want to say worst. What's an experience that like rattles you still or like makes you kind of go, oh, I got to keep that out, you know?
yeah. So I was very early on. I was told to go up to the county coroner's office in a remote county, and I went up there, and the coroner came and he looked at me, and I must have had green all over my face because he's like, "You sure you're here, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'm picking up this guy." And he's like, "You really sure about this?" And I'm said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Anything I should know?" Because I kind of reading them. And he's like, "He's a jumper." And I said, "What?" He was a jumper. And I said, "Oh, well, there was this famous bridge up that was notorious for people
Sure.
jumping off of, and to commit suicide. And this was one of those kids." And he said, "I'm gonna be honest with you. This is what's going to go down." And he explained it to me. And he said, "We're going to pick him up, and it's going to be liquefied. It's going to feel like a ocean in there because there's not
Hmm.
much left. And the bones, they got what they could, and it's kind of like it's been here a while. So." And I remember picking them up, and that feeling, that was one I'll never ever
Damn.
forget because it didn't
Yeah.
feel human, and that was traumatic. But again, I think for me, I went home and I just hugged a little tighter on
Yeah.
my son, or
Yeah.
rubbed his head a little longer when we were tucking him in. And I think you're changed
Sure.
forever, but I attribute the what I did with it was just kind of make it more always about my children, and I took it like the appreciation for life, which is what you
Yeah.
said. You just have, like, people talk to me and I'm like, come on, bro.
You don't know anything.
I might be a good coach. I might be a good coach because I'd be like, come
That's
on, bro.
nothing.
You see what I
So,
see? Ain't
so
nothing.
maybe that's like a massive appreciation and gratitude you have because you see things that
Yeah.
the rest of the world like
Right.
avoids and shies away from, and
Right.
you have a different context and appreciation and lens that you look through the world or you look upon the world through. That, I mean, I do. I have. I heard about somebody passing away, and like I feel like I hug my kids tighter. And like I remember one day I was reading my son this book, and it was before he was 2, and um and I remember like he just like I got really present for this like moment, and he hugged me tighter. I was like, okay, let's like every time I put him in bed, I'm like, cool, let's like, and he just turned 2. I was like, let's fluff your pillow up and let's which
Right.
blanket do you want? I'll have like
Right.
blankets on the side of his bed, and he'll pick a blanket. And like I said to him, all right, Pricey, do you want like let's go fluff your pillow? And he just hugged me tighter, and I fucking lost it.
Mm.
Like I started crying
Right.
my eyes out because
Right.
like I was so connected with this little human being, and I
Yeah.
was like, I never want this
Yeah.
fucking moment to end. I never want this,
I
yeah,
don't
this
want it to end.
presence to end.
I had one of those with my middle son, and we do tuck-ins at our house, especially when they were younger. Obviously, not anymore, but which I miss. And we would talk about their day, like most moms or dads do. And he started asking questions about what I do, and and then asking about well, what happens when you die, and we go to we believe that you go to heaven and it's a beautiful went the whole story with him. And he said something to the effect like, you know what's gonna when you die, Dad, i I'm gonna be really sad, but what happens when I die? How am I gonna find you? Right? And that just
Fuck.
that just destroyed me, right? Because I'm sitting there and I'm trying to be brave and I'm trying to answer the question, right? Because this is what, an 8-year-old, 6-year-old, something
Sure.
like that. And how am I going to find you in heaven? And I said, oh, well, I'll be there. I'll find you. We find each other. Don't worry. And then I went into my wife and I, crying my eyes out. And she's like, what the heck's going on? You're just tucking them in. What happened, young man? Hold it together. But, those are, it sounds like it was like that once in a lifetime conversation. And I memorialized that in the book because that was as clear as day to me. And it is still today. And it's what, 10 years later.
It's interesting you say that there's one, I'm glad you didn't tell that story in the beginning, or I think I'd be a fucking mess right now. Like, dude, you got so much emotion up in me.
Sorry.
There's a song by a country artist named Luke Combs, and it's like there's 2 songs that really get me. One of them is Trace Adkins.
Was it the one about that tells the dad's going to come back? I've heard that. It's brilliant.
I lost it. And Luke's such a great performer. It came on in the car once, and my wife looks over. She goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, fucking tears streaming down. And there's another. It's called "Even Though I'm Leaving," and in the song, it's like I cannot repeat the words because I will start crying. Like it just, it's the same thing you just said. Like, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I can do this. How am I gonna find you, Dad? Like, it fucks me up, man.
Right.
That's crazy.
And I don't know, but that's the good stuff. Ian, that's why you're doing what you're doing, and I think it's really important, especially like men, like guys like us, to share those stories because heretofore our society is like, we got to be the He-Man and like you said, be the provider and do this and that. And, that's just a bunch of bunk, man.
No.
That's just marketing that someone sold us. And that's not what we need.
So here's the last song, and I want to get your opinion, and then let's wrap it. So the other song is Trace Adkins, "You're Gonna Miss This." I don't know if you've ever heard it. Audience, go Google it. If you have children, you need to hear this song. It made a very, very strong impact on me. It's an older song. And it basically goes through these three scenarios where, let's just say there's a plumber that comes to the house, and the girl, it starts when the girl is young and her dad's running around, and then the girl has kids, and she says to the plumber, "I'm so sorry, like they're my kids are kind of a pain in the ass." Like, I'm paraphrasing, and the plumber says, "Don't worry about it. Like, I got a kid of my own. He's 30, and I'm going to tell you right now, savor these moments because you're going to miss it when it's gone." And that's the
Right.
whole gist of the song, and it'll mess you
Right.
up. Either that, like, you'll
Yeah.
register with it and realize that you're on track, or you will realize that you are not being or showing
You're
gratitude,
missing the
in the
boat.
moments that really matter, which aren't fanfare, right? They don't
Amen.
come with sparklers and fireworks and champagne bottles popping. You have to be present enough to know those moments, and you deal with people that don't get
Yeah.
that opportunity anymore, and that's hard. That's really
Nope.
hard. What's your
Yeah.
take on I say this a lot to our groups, like, do it now. When that season of your life is over, it's over. Like my daughter's 6. I know for a fact that I got to savor the flavor with bubble bath time with her and my son. Right, my daughter's 6,
Oh, for
son's 2,
sure. For
because
sure.
there will be a season when that ends, and I'm not going into a 13-year-old's bathroom going, "No, sweetheart, I didn't do it enough when you were a kid. I was
Right.
distant and thinking that my
Right.
job was most important.
Right.
I bought bubble bath," and she's like, "What are you talking
Right.
about, you crazy person?"
Yeah. You freak, get out of
Right,
here.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No, there is. And, I've gone through it with, two of my three sons, and one is just starting to turn 13, and it's getting less and less huggy with his
right.
dad. And so, yeah, no, it's a very fleeting time, but, the
Yep.
best, the
Yep. I
best.
agree. So,
Yeah.
man, we had a fun time today.
Yeah. Oh man, we did. It was
Yeah, I really
awesome.
appreciate you being on here.
We'll do it again sometime.
I would really like to read your book and then have you back on. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd
Yeah.
love it. I'd love it. I'll send
Okay.
them to you. I'll give you a
Yeah,
couple
I'd love it.
copies. Yeah,
I'd like to give it out to some of our mental purpose members too. I think it's gonna be really beneficial. Um,
that'd be
Chris, thanks for
awesome.
being here, man. Thanks for your lessons. Thanks for what you're doing, and the clarity you have, and not worrying about what people thought about you. Went to law school and got a law degree and you passed the bar,
Yeah.
yet you went into something else. Like, the lessons today are from your experiences, not as a lawyer. You know what I mean? And you helped the world
Would you
today
freedom?
on this program.